YouTube and fellow Star Wars collectors. On this episode of Toys Are the Way, we will be taking a look at another character from the first wave of vintage collection figures for 2024, Finn Starkiller Base from The Force Awakens. If you're new to the channel or a fan of Star Wars collecting, be sure to smash a like on this video, remember to subscribe, and make sure to ring that bell to stay notified. And a special thank you to my channel members, your support is greatly appreciated. Welcome back, gang. So once again, we have another character from the recent wave of vintage collection figures that's kicking off 2024, and it is Finn from The Force Awakens, which is a bit of a lackluster release, unfortunately. Now, one thing that I'm happy about is to see John Boyega make his way onto a vintage collection card back. I think that's really awesome, and I don't even have any other Force Awakens figures on card, but I'm actually pretty happy to have this one. The only thing that's just a bit of a bummer is that this figure is still available on the secondary market for a very low price, and it's also just not a very good action figure. It was kind of frustrating back then, and it's definitely a bit frustrating now. Sure, we got a photoreal update and a card back, but there really needed to be some meaningful updates to this character. But with that being said, let's take a closer look at the card back and figure. Taking a look at our vintage style packaging, we have Finn Starkiller Base on a Force Awakens card back, and we have a decent image of the character here from the movie with the Kenner logo down below. And I don't know, this image is okay, but it's kind of muted and just not very stunning in my opinion. I know it's kind of a snowy scene here on Starkiller Base, but I think many of us would have been much happier to see this figure packed with a lightsaber and then that very nice image of him igniting it in the snowy forest. I think that would have been a really nice card back and a much better move in my opinion. On the back, he is VC 308 Finn Starkiller Base, and we have another image of the figure and card back here, along with the Vintage Collection logo. So all in all, it's an okay addition to the Vintage Collection, and I'm happy to have this one carded, but I really think they should have went with the lightsaber and just that imagery instead for this card. I think a lot of us would have been much happier with that, not to mention this figure is a bit dated, but regardless, definitely kind of happy to have this one added to the collection. And taking a look at Finn out of the packaging, we are very familiar with this figure who was first released in the 3.75 Black Series line. And you can still pick him up for a very low price. In terms of articulation, he's okay. I think his upper articulation is probably the better points for this figure. He does have hinges at the wrist, which I don't like the direction they go. They kind of go inward as opposed to up and down, which I think is better for holding blasters and doing some kind of aim shot. But he's got ball jointed elbows, shoulders, his head's on a little bit of a ball joint. He's got this crunch in the torso, which isn't my favorite. I know a lot of people don't like it aesthetically because it just looks like a cut in the shirt, which is odd. And sometimes I'll agree with that. I think my biggest nitpick is that I'd rather have the point of articulation at the belt, because if I want to customize this and give him better legs, say, I don't have a matching shirt now. So that's something I prefer Hasbro do with their figures, but this one's a bit of an older model, so it doesn't quite check out. He's got ball jointed hips, but they're kind of like this older style that doesn't have a swivel at the thigh. So because of that, you kind of got to turn it and then turn the knee joint, and it just always looks odd because then this fold of the pants is on the side. It's just not my favorite figure. He also doesn't have the best range of motion in his knees. It's not quite 90, and it gets questionable as you turn those legs. One thing to point out is that he has different coloring down here on his lower pants. It's a bit more pronounced than the other figure, which I'll bring in a moment, and his shoes are actually a different color. So those are the real differences here, and his blaster also got some nice paint applications added to it. I think that actually looks pretty good, seeing those hits of color there. I do appreciate that, but all in all, yeah, this figure definitely lacks in terms of what it's compared to these days in the vintage collection. So a little bit of a letdown, and I also would have liked to see the lightsaber, of course, but unfortunately, this is what we got. Taking a look at the vintage collection figure compared to the 3.75 Black Series version on the right hand side, there's a couple things that are noticeable differences, but the main one is of course the photoreal update for the vintage collection figure, which I think looks much better. The 3.75 Black Series one has a bit of a stale and just doll-like expression. There's not much life there, while the vintage collection one has a little bit more detail and just adds a lot more life to this character. I think they also did a nice job updating the skin tone, and just overall it looks wonderful in my opinion. A couple things to note are that the jacket on the old version has a little bit more of a yellow color to it, so I like the new adjustment to the Vintage Collection figure. Of course, the rifle doesn't have any paint applications on the older version, so that's a nice update to see as well. And then taking a look at the lower legs, we have a little bit more detail on those snowy pants of his. And one thing to definitely take note of is the shoe color. Drastic change here. I can't tell if I like the gray more or which one's more accurate. I've got to go check that source material, but definitely a drastic change for the shoe color and not much else happening in terms of differences between these two figures. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. This figure was originally released as Finn Jakku back in 2016 as part of the 3.75 Black Series line, which needless to say does not hold up well in terms of articulation 8 years later. Finn Starkiller Base is hindered by old style ball jointed hips and a lack of rocker ankles, swivels at the thigh, and 90-degree bends at the knee. I think it's safe to say he's not ready for this mission or Kylo Ren. While the photoreal update and carded release of this character is appreciated, a lightsaber and updated leg articulation would have done wonders for this sequel trilogy character, to say the least. I hope you've enjoyed this video and taking a look at Finn Starkiller Base from The Force Awakens. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and don't forget to smash a like on this video and subscribe if you're new to the channel. It really helps and is always greatly appreciated. Thanks everyone, and may the Force be with you.